Hey, welcome to another episode of Card Talk, a podcast where we spend a little bit of time talking about cards from Lord of the Rings, the living card game. My name is Dave Walsh.
And I'm Grant Thompson, just along for the ride.
And today we're going to be talking about the Gondorian Spearman. He's an ally from the Tactic Sphere that was released in the core set, and he has a cost of 2 with 0 willpower, 1 attack, and 1 defense, and he's got 1 hit point. He's a Sentinel character, and his response, and I may be tainting Grant here with his unique analysis, but his response is probably why a lot of people play him, and that's when he is declared as a defender. You deal 1 damage to the attacking enemy. So Grant, not considering what I was able to taint your ideas about him, what do you think of the Gondorian Spearman?
He's brilliant. He's 2 cost, which, fair enough, is kind of pricey for his stats, but his ability more than makes up with that. And especially since the introduction of the Heirs of Numenor, which allowed you to have this Gondorian Spear, which also does direct damage. So you get an enemy that's got 2 hit points and say 5 attack. You can then basically just go and stamp on them from a great height with the Gondorian Spearman and Spear, because those 2 direct points get added before the attack actually commences. So going through, say, the Khazad-dûm cycle like I've just done would have been really easy with that combination. David, what are your thoughts?
I feel like I should love the Gondorian Spearman, but he seems like he doesn't make it into my decks for some reason. First of all, the fact that he's just a 2-cost Gondor ally is pretty good, because I think that there's a lot of high-cost Gondor allies out there. Gondor is not known for being cheap.
A lot identical.
Sentinel is good, and that when Sentinel came out, obviously it was one of those abilities that came out in the core set, and so for this guy to be a Sentinel character was really neat, and it really helped me understand what the Sentinel trait was, where he can defend and attack on the other guys in the other guy's playing field, and that was really cool. And then, and I've talked to you about my buddy that I play with here in the States, and he seems to run Gondorian Spearman all the time, and it always seems to save our butt whenever we're doing this. Like, we'll have a Black Rider out, or we'll have a hill troll, or a troll from the Hobbit, one of those guys out, and and he'll block with the Gondorian Spearman, and it seems like that Gondorian Spearman kills it. It just seems like maybe that's his planning in his head. He's like, well, I can do 8 damage to the hill troll this time, and when I declare this guy as a defender next time, I can kill it. Seems like the Gondorian Spearman has saved my Tuchus a couple of times. And that said, I seem to not put it in my deck, and I don't know why, because that direct damage is really good, and the way that the mechanic works in the game is brilliant. That as soon as you declare it as a defender, okay, against an eligible attack, that's part of the thing that has to happen, is that as soon as you declare it against the defense, it kills. As long as it has 1 hit point, that direct damage has the ability to kill and then nullify the attack. You don't have to worry about the shadow card. You don't have to worry about the attack. And I think that that's super powerful for a seemingly chump blocker sort of card. And I think that that's why his cost is 2 instead of, like a 1. I feel like I want to love him. But for some reason, in actuality, it's not that I never put him in my decks. I feel like he just doesn't get into my decks.
I agree with what you're saying. He's, especially in since I've started really focusing on my deck building, I haven't actually put a Gondorian Spearman in unless I know that, like, I can get enemies out with, say, a Phelan and Gondorian Spearman combo in Khazad-dûm. You can pull off fairly easily, but come as a Numino and even into like the later scenarios, it's not a combination that I run very often, if at all, because of the fact that it's just so much to keep it working, and you've got to get really lucky with how it works, like the enemies you pull off and when you pull them off.
Yeah, and then, and you can't, part of the mechanic of this game, of Lord of the Rings Living Card Game, is you can't group block. Some of the other games that you play, you can like take 6 enemies and group block. Here you can't group block, so you can't pile 3 Gondorian Spearmen onto one guy and then do 3 damage to him. And I simultaneously love and hate that. I love it because I think that that's more thematic than in those games where you can pile enemies or allies on top of each other and group block. I hate it because you have characters like the Gondorian Spearman, and you can't. It feels like there's potential there that you're just not able to utilize. Right. I know that there's a card that allows you to, block with as many.
Stand together, I think it's called.
Yeah, stand together, right? And so where you're allowed to, defend with as many characters as you want or whatever. But I like that he's Gondor, and a cheap Gondor. I think that helps him out a lot.
He's probably the cheapest Gondor ally, other than the Citadel Custodian, once you've got 5 already out. Yeah, he's probably one of the only Gondor characters that I actually consider adding in almost every tactics deck, other than the Defenders of Ramos.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I've actually put together a separate tactics deck. I always think of my go-to chump blockers as being like Snowborn Scout. And there's a couple of those guys in the Spirit Sphere, but in tactics, man, I've looked through tactics a million times, and it seems like I can never come up with the go-to tactics chump blocker, the go-to tactics ally to help me out. And so the Gondorian Spearman is about as close to that as I can get. Not even the Defenders of Ramos kind of match that, what I think the Gondorian Spearman is, but then the Gondorian Spearman in and of itself doesn't match the other chump blockers that are available in the other spheres.
I think it's because of his cost as well. He's a 2 cost, where as you said, the Snowborn Scout, he only costs 1 to drop in. The Sylvan Refugee costs 1 to drop in.
Right.
But other than that, there is not many 1-cost trump blockers for tactics, unless you incorporate, say, Knights of the Swan, where you're going to...
I feel like we just talked about Herluin the Fair.
Yeah, it just seems like a few minutes ago, doesn't
I
it?
know.
But if you're going to do that, then you may as well say, well, there's just paying a resource to save someone taking damage.
Right. And there's a lot of other ways to save the damage than putting in a chump blocker. Like you can save the damage by putting in a Gondorian shield or, ringmail or something like that. Like,
don't get us wrong, I love the Gondorian Spearman, but he also has some pretty... He's also pretty useless come later, like the later quests, because they always do. They've got way more hit points than the one he's able to take off, or the 2 he's able to take off with
the spear, right?
Yeah, with the spear.
And I think that that's by design. I feel like the beginning expansions and quests, scenarios, they were trying to figure out what the scoop was. Like they were trying to, show you how the game works, how it all works out. And then by the time they got down to the third or fourth, whether it's Angmar Awakens or the Grey Havens, or, whatever, when you get down to those expansions, how often do you ever see a 1 hit point bad guy? Some of those bad guys may have 1 hit point left, but I feel like, that's not something that they even want to bring into the mix here with the game. Like they got rid of a lot of that stuff.
For better or worse, it's one of the ways they develop the game, because they know what they've brought out and they know how people generally tend to play with what they've got, and they've seen that, oh wait, they're playing a lot of Gondorian Spearman. Well, why not boost the hit points of the Gondorians, of the enemies in the encounter there?
Right.
So the Thalin, Gondorian Spearman, and the Spear of the Citadel, 3 hit points, don't work anymore. I understand that they have to do it for some things, like for progression's sake.
Yeah.
But where the actual survivability of the card's concerned, can we as players justify playing a card into a deck that is not going to, may not save our butts?
Right. Exactly. Well, you have anything to add about Gondorian Spearman, or should we ring him?
Let's ring him.
Okay, well, what do you say?
I'll say probably 4 rings. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm gonna, on our little scale where where's the 1 card to rule them all, and 10 is the trash bin. I think that Gondorian Spearman in my book is a 4. He's kind of a good standby card. He can definitely be put into a lot of decks and be useful. And he's useful in a lot of those tactics decks and a lot of those battling decks, but I don't think that he is a auto-include in any deck. He doesn't have to be included over other cards in a deck. And that's what a 1 would be for me in terms of allies, would be, if I'm building a tactics deck, I have to put the Gondorian Spearman in there. That's not what he is. He's a good ally, and he saved my butt a couple of times, but I just never seem to include him in my own tactics decks.
And join us next time where we'll be talking about Merry from the Black Riders Saga box set.
Okay, have a great day.